with me here on set is Mego Terzi, and he's head of Médecins Sans Frontières, or Doctors Without Borders here in France. Thanks very much for being with us on the programme. Those figures, I mean, they are incredible, aren't they, when you hear them? I mean, let's go back first of all to what it was like 10 years ago, because when the war broke out and over the coming months and even years, the number of bombardments, the amount of fatalities, the people who lost their lives is just incredible to imagine, isn't it?
Yes, it has started with peaceful demonstrations. We had, before the events and during the demonstrations, a small team in Damascus, and we tried to assist the health centers receiving victims of violence on that time without success. And gradually the peaceful demonstrations turned to civil war with a lot of zones controlled by the opposition groups, especially in the northern part of the country. And we decided, I remember, starting from November 2011, to send people to the neighboring countries like Lebanon, Turkey, Jordan, in order to try to cross the borders and organize the assistance to the population in need.
I mean, how difficult was it at the time, and is it still now, to actually operate within Syria itself? Is it possible even?
It was not possible to work under the government-controlled areas. I remember I have sent 2 persons in August 2011 to Damascus in order to negotiate our intervention in the country, but we failed. They refused to have an organization like us. And we don't know the reasons. So we intervened starting from November 2011 up to today in the zones controlled by the armed groups in the northern part of the country, especially in Idlib and the Aleppo provinces, and also in the northeast in Al-Raqqa province. So we crossed the borders most of the time from the neighboring countries, and we try to organize the assistance. But the main assistance is done by the Syrian colleagues, that they are capable, despite the difficulties, to intervene in these dangerous zones.
You mentioned Idlib there. I mean, you've produced a film, haven't you, to mark 10 years, like we're marking it here at France 24 as well. It's with the roughly 1.5 million people who fled to the Idlib area within Syria. It tells their stories, doesn't it? I mean, we're going to watch some images from the film, but tell us why that was what you decided would be a good way of marking the anniversary as far as your organisation is concerned.
We wanted to talk about the situation of the displaced people in Idlib. Some of them, they have been evacuated at least 8 times, and they came to the final, hopefully, destination in Idlib. Some of them, they live in the same tents since 8 years now, some even 10 years. They have a lot of problems. The camps are overcrowded. Now with the COVID situation, the humanitarian situation, it's even catastrophic. Some of the health structures, they have no oxygen or very few oxygen. WHO is talking about vaccination for COVID in the zones controlled by the opposition, especially in Idlib. But how they will do that? There is no electricity, no power. So in terms of logistics and organization of cold chain for the vaccines, it will be problematic. Even if everything will be fine, only 20%, according to COVAX program, it's the WHO program, only 20% of the population will have access to the vaccines. So what about the 80% of the population? So we wanted to talk especially about Idlib because it's a symbolic town. It's the only governorate controlled up to now by the armed groups, and majority of the internally displaced people are in this province especially.
And you mentioned the externally displaced people as well. I mean, 2 of the countries we've been featuring this morning, Jordan and Turkey as well, where many people have also gone, and presumably you're doing what you can to try and help them.
Yes, we are present in Jordan before the war, and also with this new crisis starting from 2011, we started to help the refugees coming to Jordan. We are present as well in Lebanon. At least 1.5 million refugees are based in hosted communities in Bekaa Valley in Lebanon, and we are present massively as well in this country, where there is a lot of problems locally, economical problems, of course, the COVID pandemic, and it's very hard for us to reach the population, and reversal the population as well has some difficulties to reach our health centers.
Do you have any hope at all? I mean, 10 years on since this all began, the last year has been calmer in Syria, but still, as we mentioned at the top, the country is very much split into different areas, isn't it, with fighting still ongoing and people still living miles away from where their original homes are?
Yeah, the situation for me remain catastrophic. Syria remained a major humanitarian crisis. A lot of people are in the camps. We have problems related, for example, for natural catastrophe early this year with floods in the northwest part of the country, where a lot of people has lost the tents, etc., where they used to live. There is the COVID pandemic as well. So a lot of problems are there, even if I agree the violence is less significant starting from March 2020, where the belligerents have signed another ceasefire, which is more and less respected in the country.
And finally, do you think, what about the international community here? Because obviously there was a lot of attention on Syria while the war was in full flow. Since then, do you think countries have basically almost forgotten about Syria because they've got other things, for example, coronavirus, on their minds?
It's the impression that the international community, the Western countries especially, have forgotten the population in Syria. Even my organization has reduced its presence because of logistical problem related to cross-border activities. Even the UN didn't renew, for example, the cross-border from Yakuba crossing point to the northeast Syria from Turkey, for example. So a lot of problems. A lot of problems related to cross the border especially, and also the insecurity is there. But it's true that a lot of countries today, Western countries, don't even talk about this crisis, which remain the major humanitarian crisis.
Great to talk to you. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us today. Meghan Tanziani, he's head of Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. You may know it as, of course, here in France as well. Thanks very much.